The alarm bells rang through the great halls of the Galactic Hegemony Command Center. Ambassador Prime Zethkar moved his forearms quickly across the control panel, his scaled fingers dancing over the bright blue buttons. Another new species had achieved faster than light travel. It was the third one this year. Zethkar had been doing this job for 47 standard years. He had welcomed the tall, silent Vorthak into galactic society. He had negotiated with the crystal beings from the Outer Rim. He had even survived first contact with the gas-breathing methane lords, though that had required special breathing equipment and 3 weeks in the medical bay afterward. This new species came from a small yellow star in the outer spiral arm. Their planet was mostly water with some brown and green landmasses. The automated scouts had been watching them for about 200 years, waiting for them to develop space travel. Now they had finally built a ship that could travel between the stars. The ship was called Horizon's Edge. It was small and simple compared to hegemony vessels, but it had working communication systems and translation computers. The species had done their homework. They knew how to talk to other starfaring races. "Sir," said his assistant, a young female from the bird-like Kepler species, "the humans are requesting permission to dock at Station 7. Humans? Zethkar looked at the data on his screen. "Is that what they call themselves?" "Yes, sir. They say they come in peace and want to establish diplomatic relations." Zethkar nodded. Every species said they came in peace. Most of them actually meant it. The ones who didn't usually revealed themselves quickly enough. The hegemony had good security systems and even better weapons. Grant them docking permission. Prepare the standard first contact suite. Send them the basic greeting package and schedule a meeting for tomorrow morning. The next day, Zethkar walked through the long corridors toward the diplomatic meeting room. Station 7 was one of the newer facilities built specifically for first contact situations. The walls were painted in neutral colors that wouldn't upset most species. The air was filtered to remove any scents that might seem threatening. Even the lighting was carefully adjusted to be comfortable for as many different types of eyes as possible. The humans were already waiting when he arrived. Zethkar stopped at the doorway and studied them carefully. They were bipedal, like many species, but shorter than the Vorthak and taller than the crystal beings. Their skin was a light brown color, and they had hair growing from the tops of their heads, 2 eyes, 1 nose, 1 mouth. Very standard mammalian design. There were 5 of them sitting around the oval table. They all stood up when Zethkar entered the room, which was a nice touch. Many species forgot about basic politeness during first contact. "Welcome to Hegemony Station 7, Zethkar said in their language. The translation computers had worked well. "I am Ambassador Prime Zethkar. I speak for the Galactic Hegemony in all matters of first contact and diplomatic relations." The human in the center stepped forward. He was older than the others, with silver-gray hair and lines around his eyes. He wore a dark blue uniform with small metal decorations on the front. "Thank you for receiving us, Ambassador Prime," the human said. His voice was calm and respectful. "I am Ambassador Jack Murphy, representing the people of Earth and the Sol system. We are honored to meet with representatives of galactic civilization." Zethkar liked him immediately. The human had good posture, made appropriate eye contact, and spoke with the right level of formality. Not too casual, not too stiff. This Murphy fellow understood diplomacy. "Please, introduce your companions," Zethkar said, gesturing toward the other humans. "Certainly," Murphy replied. "This is Commander Lisa Grant, our military liaison." A female human with short dark hair nodded politely. She wore the same type of uniform as Murphy, but with different metal decorations. Dr. Peter Collins, our chief science officer. A thin male with brown hair and glasses smiled widely. He seemed genuinely excited to be there. Captain Mary Rodriguez, commander of our vessel. Another female, this one with longer black hair, pulled back neatly. She had the bearing of someone used to command. And Alex Turner, our cultural specialist. The youngest of the group, a male with light brown hair who looked around the room with obvious curiosity. "An excellent delegation," Zethkar said. "Please be seated, we have much to discuss." The meeting lasted for 4 hours. Zethkar found himself impressed by the humans at every turn. They asked intelligent questions about galactic law, trade regulations, and membership requirements. They seemed genuinely interested in learning about other species and their cultures. Dr. Collins was particularly engaging. He wanted to know about hegemony science, their understanding of physics, and their methods of faster-than-light travel. When Zethkar explained some of the basic principles, Collins nodded along and asked follow-up questions that showed he really understood the concepts. Commander Grant was professional and courteous when discussing military matters. She explained that humanity had a unified defense force, but that their primary mission was exploration and peaceful contact with other species. She seemed genuinely interested in learning about hegemony security protocols, not for any hostile purpose, but to make sure her people followed proper procedures. Captain Rodriguez spoke about their journey to hegemony space. It had taken them 6 months to reach Station 7 from their home system. They had been very careful to follow the approach routes specified in the first contact package. She thanked Zethkar for the clear instructions and asked several questions about interstellar navigation that showed impressive technical knowledge. Alex Turner was fascinated by everything. He asked about the different species in the hegemony, their cultures, their art, their music. He seemed to absorb every detail like a student eager to learn. He even asked about proper etiquette for meeting other species, showing a level of cultural sensitivity that many first contact delegations lacked. But it was Ambassador Murphy who impressed Zethkar the most. The human leader had a quality that was rare among diplomats. He seemed genuinely sincere. When he spoke about humanity's desire to join galactic civilization, Zethkar believed him completely. "We know we are a young species," Murphy said near the end of the meeting. "We have much to learn from races that have been traveling the stars for thousands of years, but we hope we can contribute something valuable to the galactic community. What do you believe humanity can offer?" "Zethkar?" asked. Murphy smiled. It was a warm expression that made his eyes crinkle at the corners. "We are good at solving problems. We are curious about everything. And we have learned, sometimes through painful experience, that cooperation works better than conflict." He paused and looked around the table at his companions. "Our species has made many mistakes. We fought wars, damaged our environment, and nearly destroyed ourselves more than once. But we learned from those mistakes. We discovered that working together produces better results than fighting each other." Zethkar nodded approvingly. Many species went through similar growing pains. The important thing was learning from them. "We have brought some gifts," Murphy continued, "small things from our world that we hope will show you something about who we are." The humans opened several small containers and spread the contents on the table. There were pieces of art, small sculptures carved from wood and stone, musical instruments that could fit in one hand, books bound in paper with colorful covers, photographs of their world showing cities, forests, oceans, and mountains. "These are beautiful," Zethkar said, picking up one of the wooden sculptures. It was carved in the shape of a bird with its wings spread. The detail was incredible, and the wood had been polished until it gleamed. "My daughter made that," Murphy said quietly. "She is studying to be an artist. She wanted to contribute something to this historic moment." The personal touch moved Zethkar deeply. This was not just official diplomacy. These humans cared about making a good impression. As the meeting ended, Zethkar felt more optimistic than he had in years. Humanity seemed like exactly the kind of species the hegemony needed: curious, cooperative, and willing to learn. They would make excellent junior partners in galactic civilization. "I will recommend to the Hegemony Council that we fast-track your membership application," he told Murphy. "Based on this meeting, I believe humanity would be a valuable addition to our community." Murphy's smile could have lit up the entire station. "Thank you, Ambassador Prime. You have given us a great gift today. Hope for our species' future among the stars." 3 months had passed since the humans arrived at Station 7. Ambassador Prime Zethkar watched from his office window as crowds of different species gathered in the main plaza below. They were all waiting to catch a glimpse of the human delegation who had become the most popular visitors in recent hegemony history. Every day brought new requests for meetings with the humans. Scientists wanted to talk with Dr. Collins about Earth's research methods. Military officers sought discussions with Commander Grant about defense strategies. Cultural groups lined up to meet with Alex Turner to share their traditions and learn about human customs. Ambassador Murphy had addressed the Hegemony Council twice in the past month. Both times, he received standing ovations from representatives of over 200 different worlds. His speeches about cooperation and peaceful problem-solving had become required reading in diplomatic schools across the galaxy. Zethkar smiled as he remembered yesterday's incident. A group of young Kepler students had surrounded Captain Rodriguez in the station's cafe, bombarding her with questions about human space travel. Instead of becoming annoyed, Rodriguez had spent 2 hours drawing diagrams on napkins and explaining basic rocket science to the excited youngsters. The humans were different from any species the Hegemony had ever encountered. They seemed genuinely interested in everyone they met. They asked questions, listened carefully to answers, and remembered personal details about individuals they had spoken with only once. Dr. Collins had revolutionized 3 different research projects just by asking simple questions that no one else had thought to ask. His collaboration with the Zenthari physics team had led to a breakthrough in energy storage technology. The crystal beings had invited him to visit their homeworld, an honor they had never extended to any other species. Commander Grant had become equally popular with military personnel. She attended strategy meetings and offered insights that impressed even the most experienced Hegemony generals. Her suggestions had helped resolve a border dispute between 2 minor systems without any violence at all. She thinks like a warrior but speaks like a peacemaker, General Voskim had told Zethkar after a particularly successful negotiation session. The humans understand conflict better than most species, but they use that understanding to prevent fights rather than start them. What amazed everyone was how the humans talked about war. Unlike most species who either glorified battle or refused to discuss it entirely, the humans spoke about conflict with a deep sadness that seemed genuine. War is waste, Murphy had said during his first council address. It wastes lives, resources, time, and hope. My people learned this lesson the hard way. We fought many wars in our early history, and each one taught us that the cost of victory is often higher than the price of defeat. He had paused then, looking out at the assembled representatives with those kind eyes that had won over so many hearts. We do not claim to be perfect. We made terrible mistakes. We hurt each other and damaged our world, but we learned to do better. We discovered that former enemies can become the strongest allies if you give them the chance. The audience had been completely silent, hanging on every word. That is why we are here today. Not to seek advantage or gain power, but to learn from species wiser than ourselves. We hope that by joining the Hegemony, we can contribute to the peace that you have built among the stars. Zethkar had seen hardened military commanders wipe tears from their eyes during that speech. The humans told stories about their world that painted a picture of a species that had overcome incredible challenges through cooperation. They spoke of ending global hunger through shared technology, stopping climate change through international teamwork, and achieving space travel by combining the resources of their entire planet. Alex Turner had become a celebrity among cultural scholars. His presentations about human art, music, and literature drew packed audiences. He explained how different human cultures had learned to celebrate their differences while working toward common goals. We have a saying on Earth, Turner had told a gathering of cultural ambassadors. Unity does not mean uniformity. We can be different and still be united. We can celebrate what makes us unique while working together for what we all need. The scholars loved him. 3 universities had already offered him permanent teaching positions. Captain Rodriguez had impressed everyone with her technical knowledge and her humble attitude. She attended engineering conferences and listened more than she spoke. When Biwasarin, she did contribute ideas. They were practical suggestions that improved existing designs rather than dramatic new inventions. Human engineering is not the most advanced, she had admitted to a group of shipbuilders. But we are good at making things work reliably. We learn to build machines that function even when conditions are not perfect. Her approach had led to improvements in several hegemony ship designs. The engineers appreciated her focus on practical solutions rather than theoretical perfection, but it was the personal connections that impressed Zethkar the most. The humans remembered names, asked about family members, and followed up on conversations from weeks earlier. They attended birthday parties, cultural celebrations, and retirement ceremonies. They brought small gifts and wrote thank you notes. Murphy had spent an entire afternoon visiting the medical bay when a junior diplomat's child was injured in an accident. He had not been asked to come. He simply heard about the situation and showed up with flowers and children's books from Earth. Grant had volunteered to help train young military cadets, teaching them about leadership and decision-making. She used examples from human history to illustrate her points, always emphasizing the importance of protecting civilians and minimizing casualties. Collins had established a weekly science club for young researchers, sharing human discoveries and encouraging questions. His enthusiasm was infectious, and attendance grew every week as word spread about his engaging teaching style. Rodriguez had started an informal engineering workshop where she shared human problem-solving methods. She emphasized creativity and resourcefulness, showing how humans had learned to accomplish difficult tasks with limited resources. Turner had organized cultural exchange events where different species could share their traditions. These gatherings had become so popular that the station had to reserve larger meeting rooms to accommodate all the attendees. The humans' influence extended beyond the station. Their ideas about conflict resolution were being studied and implemented throughout hegemony space. 3 territorial disputes had been resolved using negotiation methods based on human examples. The Vorthak and the Methane Lords had been arguing over mining rights in a neutral system for over 50 years. After Ambassador Murphy suggested a profit-sharing arrangement that benefited both species, they reached an agreement in less than a week. The humans see solutions where others see only problems, Emperor Thaisalon had told his advisors during a private meeting. They approach every situation with curiosity instead of suspicion. They look for ways to help, rather than ways to gain advantage. The Emperor had grown particularly fond of the human delegation. He had invited them to several state dinners and always made time to speak with them personally. Murphy had even convinced him to try coffee, a human beverage that had become surprisingly popular throughout the station. These beings represent the future of galactic civilization, the Emperor had declared. They have the wisdom that comes from learning difficult lessons combined with the energy and optimism of a young species. They will strengthen the hegemony immeasurably. Zethkar agreed completely. In all his years of diplomatic service, he had never encountered a species so perfectly suited for membership in galactic society. The humans seemed to embody every virtue the hegemony claimed to value. They were curious, but not aggressive, confident, but not arrogant, experienced, but not cynical. They offered help without expecting anything in return. They shared knowledge freely and listened to advice humbly. Most importantly, they seemed genuinely committed to peace. Their stories about overcoming conflict through cooperation inspired other species to reconsider their own disputes. Several long-standing rivalries were showing signs of improvement thanks to human mediation efforts. As Zethkar watched the crowds gathering to welcome the humans back from their latest goodwill mission, he felt proud of his role in bringing them into galactic society. The hegemony was stronger because of humanity's presence. The membership approval was now just a formality. Every single council member supported the human application. The vote would be unanimous, something that had never happened before in hegemony history. Humanity had found its place among the stars, and the galaxy was better for it. Junior archivist Kelmtar rubbed her tired eyes with the back of her hand. She had been working late every night for the past 2 weeks, preparing the final documentation for humanity's membership approval. The council meeting was tomorrow, and everything needed to be perfect. The human application was the most popular proposal in hegemony history. Every single council member planned to vote yes. The Emperor himself would personally welcome humanity as the newest member species. It would be a celebration unlike anything the galaxy had seen, but something was bothering Kelmtar. Small details. that did not quite fit together, numbers that seemed wrong, dates that made no sense. She pulled up the human historical timeline on her computer screen. According to their records, humanity had transitioned from global warfare to peaceful cooperation in just 200 years. That was incredibly fast. Most species took at least 1,000 years to achieve planetary unity. The humans claimed they had learned from their mistakes and chosen peace over conflict. They said they had ended all wars through diplomacy and mutual understanding. Their representatives spoke about this transformation with deep emotion and obvious sincerity. But something about the timeline nagged at Kelmatar. She had studied the histories of dozens of species, and none of them had changed so quickly. The Vorthak had needed 3,000 years to stop fighting among themselves. The crystal beings had taken 5,000 years to develop peaceful government. Even the wise Zenthari had experienced centuries of conflict before achieving harmony. How had humanity done it so much faster? Kelmtar opened a new file and began cross-referencing dates. According to the human records, their last major war had ended exactly 215 years ago. After that, they claimed to have focused entirely on science, exploration, and peaceful development. She frowned at her screen. The automated monitoring probes had been watching the Sol system for much longer than that. Every species was observed for at least 500 years before first contact. The hegemony wanted to understand new civilizations before making contact. Maybe the probe records would explain the rapid transformation. Kelmtar entered her access codes and pulled up the Deep Space Monitoring archives. The data was massive, centuries of observations stored in compressed files that most archivists never bothered to examine. She started with the most recent records from about 50 years ago. The probes showed a quiet solar system with small populations on several worlds. Earth, Mars, and a few other planets had cities and space stations, but nothing impressive by galactic standards. Kelmtar scrolled backward through the timeline. 60 years ago, 70 years ago, 80 years ago. The populations were larger in the older records, which seemed odd. Usually, species grew larger over time, not smaller. She continued scrolling backward. 100 years ago, the probe records showed much more activity. Large space stations, busy shipping lanes between planets, orbital construction projects. The Sol system had been more active in the past than it was now. That made no sense at all. Kelmatar went back further. 150 years ago, the HFY probe data showed a thriving interplanetary civilization. Millions of ships traveled between worlds. Massive space stations orbited every planet. The asteroid belt was full of mining operations. She sat back in her chair, confused. According to the human records, this should have been near the end of their period of global warfare. But the probe data showed a peaceful, prosperous civilization. Something was very wrong. Kelmtar jumped to the records from 200 years ago. Around the time the humans claimed their last war had ended. What she saw made her stomach turn cold. The probe data showed battles. Enormous space battles involving thousands of ships. Orbital bombardments that lit up entire continents. Explosions so large they could be seen from the outer planets. The HFY Sol system had been at war, but not the kind of war the humans had described. This was not primitive fighting between nations on a single planet. This was advanced interplanetary warfare involving technologies that impressed even the hegemony's military analysts. Kelmtar scrolled through months of battle recordings. The humans had been fighting each other across their entire solar system. Fleets of massive warships engaged in combat near Jupiter. Weapons that could destroy moons were used against civilian targets. Entire worlds were bombarded until their surfaces glowed red. The war had lasted for decades. The probe data showed that 96% of the human population had died during the fighting. Most of their worlds had been rendered uninhabitable. Their magnificent civilization had been reduced to a few scattered survivors hiding in fortified bunkers. Kelmtar felt sick. The humans had not evolved beyond warfare through wisdom and cooperation. They had simply fought until almost everyone was dead. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what she found when she cross-referenced the biometric data. Every species that achieved space travel was automatically scanned and cataloged by the monitoring probes. The systems recorded facial features, body measurements, and other identifying characteristics. This data was used to track population movements and identify important individuals. Kelmtar ran the current human delegation's biometric profiles through the historical database. She expected to find no matches. The war had been 2 centuries ago, and humans probably lived shorter lives than most species. Instead, she found perfect matches for all 5 delegates. Ambassador Jack Murphy appeared in the probe records as Colonel Jacob Morrison, commander of the military force that had destroyed the Europa colonies. The probe data showed him ordering the bombardment of civilian shelters, killing over 2 million people in a single day. Commander Lisa Grant was listed as General Elizabeth Graham, who had commanded the fleet that attacked Luna City. The probe recordings showed her ships firing on evacuation vessels, deliberately targeting civilians trying to escape the fighting. Dr. Peter Collins was identified as Dr. Paul Constantine, creator of the biological weapon called Red Death. The probe data showed him testing the weapon on prisoner populations, killing hundreds of thousands of people in the most horrible ways imaginable. Captain Mary Rodriguez was actually Admiral Michelle Reeves, commander of the fleet that had glassed Mars. The probe recordings showed her ordering the complete destruction of the planet's surface, burning away the atmosphere and killing every living thing. Alex Turner was Captain Andrew Taylor, known for his brutal suppression of civilian populations on the outer worlds. The probe data showed him ordering mass executions and using torture to extract information from prisoners. These were not peaceful diplomats seeking cooperation. These were the 5 most wanted war criminals in human history. They were the architects of their species' near extinction, responsible for the deaths of over 40 billion people. Kelmtar stared at the data in horror. The humans everyone loved and admired were mass murderers. The wise, peaceful ambassadors were the worst killers their species had ever produced. But how were they still alive after 200 years? And why were they here? She dug deeper into the probe records looking for clues. The data showed that the 5 war criminals had disappeared during the final phase of the conflict. Their ships had vanished from the battlefield, and they were presumed dead. But they had not died. They had survived somehow and spent the next 2 centuries preparing for this moment. They had studied hegemony culture, learned their languages, and crafted false identities. They had become exactly what galactic civilization wanted to see: peaceful, wise, cooperative beings seeking membership in the galactic community. Kelmtar realized she was shaking. The implications were terrifying. If the humans had lied about their identities, what else had they lied about? Were they really seeking peaceful cooperation? Or did they have other plans? She thought about all the information the human delegation had gathered over the past few months. They had attended military briefings, visited strategic installations, and spoken with leaders from every major species. They had been welcomed into the highest levels of hegemony government and trusted with sensitive information. What if they were not refugees seeking sanctuary? What if they were spies preparing for invasion? Kelmtar looked at the probe data one more time. The humans had nearly destroyed their entire civilization fighting each other. They had used weapons that could crack planets and killed billions of their own people. If they were willing to do that to each other, what would they do to alien species? She had to report this immediately. The council meeting was tomorrow, and they were planning to vote on human membership. If the humans were approved, they would gain access to the entire hegemony. They would have the legal right to travel to any world, establish colonies, and bring more of their people into galactic space. Kelmtar copied all the data to a secure file and marked it for immediate delivery to Ambassador Prime Zethkar. Then she sent additional copies to the Emperor's security staff and the military command center. The galaxy was about to welcome humanity with open arms, never knowing they were inviting the most dangerous predators in the universe into their home. Ambassador Prime Zethkar had not slept in 36 hours. His office was filled with senior officials from every branch of the hegemony government. Military commanders sat next to intelligence analysts. The Emperor's personal advisors whispered quietly in corners. Everyone looked exhausted and worried. The evidence spread across the main conference table could not be argued with. Probe recordings, biometric scans, historical data, all of it proved that the human delegation were war criminals of the worst kind. The beings that half the galaxy had fallen in love with were monsters wearing masks of kindness. "Show me the Morrison files again," said General Vossikim, his voice tight with anger. Kelmtar touched her tablet, and the wall screen displayed probe footage from 200 years ago. The image showed a man in military uniform standing on the bridge of a warship. The face was older and scarred, but it was unmistakably Jack Murphy. "This is Colonel Jacob Morrison during the Europa attack," Kelmatar explained. "The probe data shows him ordering the bombardment of civilian shelters. Over 2 million people died in 6 hours. The recording played audio of Morrison giving orders to his fleet. His voice was cold and efficient as he directed the destruction of evacuation sites and refugee camps. The man speaking was nothing like the warm, gentle Ambassador Murphy that everyone knew." "And you are certain this is the same individual?" asked Chancellor Morthdan. "The biometric match is perfect," Kelmtar replied. "Bone structure, facial measurements, genetic markers, everything matches exactly. This is the same person, General." Voskum slammed his fist on the table. "That man has been in our strategic planning meetings. He has seen our defense layouts for 12 different systems. He knows our fleet positions, our supply routes, our emergency protocols." "They all do," added Intelligence Director Kernvel. "Commander Grant attended classified military briefings. Dr. Collins had access to our research databases. Captain Rodriguez toured our shipyards. Turner visited cultural centers on 15 different worlds. Emperor Taisalan sat quietly at the Yasiu, head of the table, his expression unreadable. He had personally welcomed the human delegation multiple times. He had shared meals with them, told them about hegemony history, and treated them as honored guests." "How long have they been planning this?" the Emperor asked finally. Kelmatar consulted her notes. "Based on the probe data, they disappeared from human space exactly 203 years ago, near the end of their civil war. They have had over 2 centuries to prepare for this moment." 2 centuries, whispered Chancellor Morthdan. "They have been studying us for 200 years. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the implications. The humans had not stumbled into galactic civilization by accident. They had been planning this infiltration since before most of the people in the room were born. "What else have they lied about?" asked Admiral Kessitar. Intelligence Director Kernvel activated another display. "Everything, their ship, the horizons. Edge is not a simple exploration vessel. Our deep scans show advanced weapon systems hidden in the hull. Their engines are more sophisticated than anything we have seen from species of their supposed development level." The display showed technical readouts that made several military officers lean forward in surprise. "Those power signatures are consistent with antimatter weapons," Admiral Kessitar said. "How did they develop that technology?" "They didn't develop it recently," Kernvel replied. "Based on the probe records, human military technology was already advanced 2 centuries ago. They have had time to improve it since then." General Vossikim looked sick. "We thought they were primitive. We shared our own technology with them, thinking we were helping a young species learn. Instead, we were giving weapons to killers." The Emperor raised one hand for silence. "What do we know about their current military capabilities?" Kernvel touched his controls, and new images appeared on the screen. "This is where it gets worse. The probe data from recent years shows hidden installations throughout the Sol system. Military bases built inside asteroids, shipyards disguised as mining operations, population centers that have been deliberately hidden from our sensors. The images showed massive construction projects that had been invisible to hegemony observers. Underground cities, hidden fleets, weapons factories that could produce enough military equipment to arm entire invasion forces." "How many humans are there really?" asked Chancellor Morthdan. "We estimated 50 million based on visible population centers," Kernvel said. "But these hidden installations could support 10 times that number, maybe more." Admiral Kessitar leaned back in his chair. "So they are not a dying species seeking help. They are a military civilization preparing for war." "That appears to be correct," Kernvel confirmed. The Emperor stood up and walked to the window overlooking the station's main plaza. Even now, crowds of hegemony citizens were gathering, hoping to catch sight of the popular human delegation. Children held signs welcoming humanity to galactic civilization. Cultural groups had prepared celebration ceremonies. They have been watching us for 2 centuries, the Emperor said quietly, learning our weaknesses, studying our defenses, mapping our territories, and we have been helping them do it. He turned back to face the room. Show me the Constantine. Files. The screen changed to show probe footage of Dr. Paul Constantine, the man they knew as Dr. Peter Collins. The recording showed him in a laboratory, working with samples of the biological weapon that had killed hundreds of thousands of people. The Red Death virus was designed to target specific genetic markers, Kelmtar explained. It could be modified to affect different species. Dr. Constantine was working on versions that could kill any form of life. Several officials looked genuinely frightened. Biological weapons were banned throughout hegemony space. Most species had never even developed such things. He has been attending our medical conferences, said Health Director Nimtar. He has samples of genetic material from dozens of species. He could create weapons that would target any of us. The Emperor nodded grimly. What about the others? The screen showed footage of the other 3 war criminals. General Elizabeth, Graham commanding fleets in the destruction of Luna City, Admiral Michelle Reeves ordering the glassing of Mars, Captain Andrew Taylor supervising mass executions on the outer worlds. Each of them is responsible for billions of deaths, Kelmtar said. They are the 5 worst war criminals in human history. They destroyed their own civilization and killed most of their own species. General Vosakim stood up suddenly. We have to arrest them immediately, before they can report back to their home system. On what charges? Asked Chancellor Morthdan. Their crimes were committed against their own people 2 centuries ago. We have no legal authority to prosecute them. Then we expel them from hegemony space, Admiral Kessitar suggested. Intelligence Director Kieranvel shook his head. They already know everything they came to learn. Expelling them now just tells them we have discovered their true identities. It gives them time to prepare for whatever they are really planning. The Emperor returned to his seat. What are they planning? What do they want? The room was quiet for a long moment. Finally, Kieranvel spoke. Based on their behavior patterns and the information they have gathered, our analysts believe they are conducting reconnaissance for a military invasion. They have mapped our defenses, identified our weaknesses, and studied our military capabilities. He activated a new display showing star charts with human observations marked in red. They have requested detailed information about 17 different systems. All of them are lightly defended agricultural worlds with small populations. Perfect. Targets for conquest. Chancellor Morthdan looked horrified. They are planning to invade hegemony space? It appears so, Kieranvel confirmed. The Sol system has the industrial capacity to build invasion fleets. Their hidden population could provide millions of soldiers. And now they know exactly where to strike for maximum effect. The Emperor stared at the star charts. Red marks covered dozens of systems, peaceful worlds that had never known war, now targeted by killers who had destroyed their own civilization. How long do we have? He asked. Unknown, Kieranvel replied. They could begin their attack at any time. Their ship could carry messages back to Sol system using quantum communication. Their invasion fleet might already be on the way. Admiral Kessitar activated his communicator. All fleet commanders, this is Admiral Kessitar. Implement Security Protocol 7 immediately. Lock down all military installations and prepare for possible hostile action. The Emperor watched the crowds, celebrating in the plaza below. In a few hours, the Council would vote to welcome humanity into galactic civilization. Instead, they might be voting to defend against the most dangerous threat the hegemony had ever faced. Gentlemen, the Emperor said quietly, we are dealing with beings who killed 40 billion of their own people. What do you think they will do to us? No one in the room had an answer to that question. The emergency meeting had been going for 12 hours straight. Emperor Thistleon looked around the table at the exhausted faces of his advisors. They had been debating the same impossible question since dawn. What could they do about the humans? We could arrest them publicly, suggested General Voskim for the third time. Show the evidence to the council. Expose them as war criminals. Chancellor Morthdan shook his head wearily. Half the council would not believe us. The humans have spent months building relationships with every major leader. Some of those leaders consider the humans to be personal friends. The proof is right there, Admiral Kessitar said, pointing at the data displays. The probe recordings, the biometric, matches, the hidden military installations. How can anyone argue with that? Intelligence Director Kernvel activated a new screen showing communication intercepts. Because they have allies who will defend them. Look at these messages from the past 6 hours. The screen showed dozens of communications from hegemony officials, expressing support for humanity. Several council members had sent messages demanding to know why military forces were being placed on alert. 3 different species had offered to provide security for the human delegation. Senator Vorthak believes we are planning to attack the humans out of jealousy, Kernvel continued. The Kepler ambassador thinks this is a conspiracy by military hardliners who fear human peacekeeping success. Even some of our own people think we are overreacting. The Emperor rubbed his temples. The humans had played their parts perfectly. They had become so beloved that exposing them would split the hegemony government. Some officials would believe the evidence, while others would see it as a betrayal of innocent friends. What about a quiet arrest? Suggested Chancellor Morthdan. Take them into custody without public announcement. Question them privately. Admiral Kessitar shook his head. Their ship has quantum communication systems. The moment we move against them, they can send a warning to Sol System. Their invasion fleet could launch immediately. Do we know where their invasion fleet is? Asked the Emperor. Kernvel consulted his reports. Our deep space monitors have detected unusual activity in 17 different systems near human space. Large objects moving at sublight speeds, maintaining communication silence. They could be anything, but the pattern suggests military formations. General Voskim leaned forward. How large? Each formation appears to contain between 50 and 100 vessels, Kernvel replied. If they are all military ships, we are looking at over 1,000 enemy vessels approaching hegemony space. The room fell silent. The largest hegemony military operation in recent history had involved fewer than 200 ships. When will they arrive? The Emperor asked quietly. If they maintain current speed and trajectory, the first formations will reach our outer systems in approximately 6 months, Kernvel said. But they could accelerate if they receive orders to do so. Admiral Kessitar activated his tactical display. Our entire active fleet consists of 430 ships. We have maybe 200 more in reserve that could be activated within a month. Against 1,000 enemy vessels with unknown capabilities, our chances are not good. The Emperor stared at the tactical display showing hegemony space. Peaceful worlds that had known safety for centuries were about to face an invasion by beings who had destroyed their own civilization. There is something else, Kernvel said reluctantly. We intercepted a private conversation between 2 of the human delegates. They did not know we were monitoring their quarters. He activated an audio recording. The voices of Dr. Peter Collins and Alex Turner filled the room, speaking in quiet tones. The reconnaissance phase is nearly complete, Collins was saying. We have mapped their primary defensive installations and identified the key strategic targets. The agricultural worlds will fall quickly, Turner replied. Minimal defenses, large populations that can be relocated for labor purposes. The Kepler, homeworld alone, has enough arable land to support 10 million of our people. What about resistance from the military worlds? Collins asked. Turner laughed coldly. They have not fought a real war in over 300 years. Their ships are designed for patrol duty, not combat. Their crews have never seen actual battle. It will be like fighting children. The recording continued for several more minutes, with the 2 humans discussing invasion plans, target priorities, and population management strategies. They spoke about conquered worlds like items on a shopping list. When the recording ended, the room was completely silent. Population management strategies, Chancellor Morthdan repeated slowly. What do they mean by that? Kernvel pulled up another file. Based on their historical behavior during the human Civil War, we believe they plan to use conquered populations as forced labor. The probe records show they have experience managing slave populations on multiple worlds. General Voskim slammed his hand on the table. They are planning to enslave entire species. It gets worse, Kieranville said. The conversation continued after we stopped the recording. They discussed something called the Final Protocol. He played another audio segment. This time, the human voices were discussing biological weapons and genetic targeting systems. Final Protocol ensures compliance, Collins was saying. Any species that resist too strongly can be reduced to manageable population levels. The Red Death variants we have developed are 99% effective against most galactic species. How? Long for complete sterilization if needed? Turner asked. For an entire planet? 6 to 8 weeks, depending on atmospheric conditions. The beauty of biological weapons is that they leave the infrastructure intact. We can move our own people in immediately after the native population is eliminated. The recording ended. Several officials in the room looked physically sick. They are not just planning invasion, the Emperor said quietly. They are planning genocide. Admiral Kessitar stood up abruptly. I am ordering immediate evacuation of all non-essential personnel from border systems. We need to begin moving civilians away from potential target areas. That will cause panic, Chancellor Morthdan warned. Mass evacuations without explanation will destabilize the entire hegemony. The alternative is mass death. Admiral Kessitar replied grimly. The Emperor looked at the star chart showing human fleet movements. Over 1,000 ships carrying weapons that could sterilize planets. An enemy that spoke of genocide like a routine military tactic. There's one more thing, Kieranville said. Our analysis of the probe data has revealed something we missed initially. The human Civil War did not end because both sides exhausted themselves. It ended because one side won. He activated a new display showing the final phase of the human Civil War. The faction led by these 5 individuals achieved total victory. They did not stop fighting because they learned the value of peace. They stopped fighting because they had killed everyone who opposed them. The display showed the systematic elimination of human resistance groups, the destruction of entire settlements, and the establishment of a totalitarian military government. The current human civilization is not a democracy that chose peace. Kernvell continued. It is a military dictatorship run by the survivors of the most brutal war in galactic history. And now they have turned their attention to us. Emperor Thistleon stood up slowly. The weight of the decision ahead of him felt heavier than the crown he wore. How long do we have before the council meeting? He asked. 4 hours, Chancellor, Morthdan replied. The Emperor nodded. Cancel the membership vote. Instead, we will be declaring a state of emergency. Alert all fleet commanders to prepare for war. Begin evacuating civilian populations from border systems immediately. He paused and looked around the room at his advisors. Send a message to every member species. Tell them that we face an enemy unlike any we have encountered before. These are not soldiers fighting for territory or resources. They are apex predators, who view the entire galaxy as prey. Admiral Kessitar activated his communicator. All stations. This is Admiral Kessitar. Implement condition red immediately. This is not a drill. Prepare for incoming hostile forces. The Emperor walked to the window and looked down at the plaza where crowds were still celebrating humanity's expected membership approval. Children waved flags welcoming their new galactic neighbors. Cultural groups prepared celebration ceremonies. None of them knew that they were celebrating the arrival of the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. What have we done? The Emperor whispered. Behind him, his advisors were already beginning the desperate preparations for a war that would determine whether galactic civilization survived or fell to the monsters they had welcomed with open arms.